Hi, welcome back to Job Opportunity. And today we have Pastor Jimmy Bay, who is a youth pastor at New Song Church. Mr. Bay, how are you today?
I'm good. You don't have to call me Mr. Bay.
All right. Today we are asking a few questions about your job. To start off, can you briefly explain your profession and what you do as a youth pastor?
As a pastor, you've got multiple different roles, but it's basically to meet the needs of whatever the church needs or the community needs. My role specifically, of course, at a church, there are multiple different types of pastors. So it covers any type of need, but my role as a youth pastor is to meet the needs of the youth. And so that's going to be 6th to 12th grade. And that ranges from developing curriculum, right? And so just like a teacher at a school, my curriculum though is focused primarily on spiritual needs. And so we're looking at the development of people's spirituality, emotions, mental health, all of these things that all kind of ties in with soul care. So we've got developing curriculum, and then we've also got, of course, pastoral care, which involves counseling. I think one aspect of the job that most people overlook is that a lot of people don't necessarily need to be taught a lot. I mean, in youth ministry, yes, there's a lot of teaching that goes on, but secondly, a lot of pastoral care, a lot of counseling. It almost feels similar to therapy. So I always make a joke that youth ministry is like free therapy, right? And then finally, a lot of it is training and recruiting. So if I could break down my job into three big categories, it would be curriculum and teaching, counseling, recruiting, and training.
Wow. So would you say that being a teacher and being a pastor goes hand in hand in your academic pathway?
Well, it's tricky because to be a pastor, you need to go to a special type of school after college, and that's called seminary. And seminary can be a 4-year program, a 3-year program, depends on how crazy you are and how many classes you take a semester. But after you get your bachelor's degree, you apply to seminary. And in seminary, you take, like your Hebrew classes, your Greek classes, your Bible classes, your theology classes, and your preaching classes, all of that good stuff. And then you can become a pastor. But not all churches require you to have an MDiv or a THM or a DMin, right? These are degrees that you get from seminaries. Not all churches require you to get that. Some churches just want you to be licensed with a denomination. So denominations are huge organizations that can say, hey, you know what? This guy is someone we trust and he's legit and he's not going to harm people. And so I applied to get my licensing. And then some churches were like, yeah, we don't care if you don't have a degree. Yeah, we saw you went to college, but we don't really care if you have a seminary degree. We will still hire you. So yeah, that was kind of the pathway.
And do you think doing seminary actually helps you, like benefits you as a pastor, or do you think it's not necessarily necessary to be a pastor?
Right. So I always tell people who want to become pastors, you don't need to go to seminary. It's really expensive. Some churches do require seminary. So if you want to work at those churches, yeah, you got to do it. But not all churches do. So if you just want to become a pastor, you don't need to. You can read you could learn Hebrew on your own. It's just very hard. You could read all those books on your own. It's just you need to have discipline. Now, some people don't read those books on their own. They need a class to keep them accountable and force them to read. So if you're like that, then you might need it, yeah.
All right, now let's flip to your schedule now. What does an ordinary day look like for you as a pastor?
An ordinary day can be they're like busy seasons and there are not so busy seasons. And so in the not so busy seasons, most of it is, preparing for sermons, organizing the ministry, and really taking care of the people, reaching out to them and all of that stuff. And then, there's some programs that we start and then we have to go through. So We've had classes, and Noah, you've been in one of the classes before, like discipleship training, where we go through books with students, we go through curriculum, things like that. And then just community outreach where you're visiting people, and then regular counselor care. Now, when there's busy seasons like camps, retreats, end of the school year, you got to do a lot of recruiting, you got to do a lot of training, you got to do a lot of networking, tons and tons of meetings, right? I don't know why, but there's just so many meetings. And so there are a ton of meetings that you need to do in order to make sure everybody's on the same page, in order to prepare for future seasons, in order to prepare programs and events. And so one type of pastor that really gets overlooked, and not a lot of people even keep it in mind, is like logistics pastors or administrative pastors or executive pastors. These are the people who make everything run, right? Everything from keeping the books to training people to recruiting people, all the way to organizing certain events, right? Every Sunday, people don't realize it, but it's like a concert, right? It's kind of like putting a concert together, getting everything to work together, making sure everything is safe and all of that stuff. So ton of details in every little thing about church. That's pretty much what pastors are talking about and meeting about, making the magic happen. Yeah.
And during those busy seasons, how do you stay focused on still helping the kids and still like ministering to your youth?
So it really depends on the size of the ministry. I've been in small churches too, where we can execute the programs and I'll still hit up each and every single kid and we'll still grab a meal and all of that stuff. And then I've been at big churches like I am now at New Song. A lot of it requires delegating. So I lean a lot on small group leaders. It would not be possible for me if I didn't have these awesome small group leaders. You know what I mean? And so we actually have about 5 to 10 students per small group leader, and they are the ones like keeping in touch, keeping track. And then I talk to the small group leaders and see how everybody's doing. And we make a second round of talking and phone calls and grabbing a meal with students who really need it, based on what the small group leaders kind of report and say.
And how long did it take for you to grow your career, and how much struggle/stress did you experience in the beginning of your career as well as now?
I think in the beginning, one of the biggest struggles is, I would say preaching is just maybe like 5 to 10% of the job. But when you first start off, it feels like 100% of the job. And in the beginning, when you preach, man, every sermon that you mess up feels like a knife to the heart. I would just work on my preaching game, And then not only that, I would try to work in developing relationships with students, And so, man, the first couple years, you feel like you don't know what you're doing. You feel like you're messing up all of the time. But if you put the work in, if you grind it out, and you just place your trust in the Lord, He really makes all things happen. I've been in this for a long time, and a lot of people get discouraged in the first 3 to 4 years and they feel like quitting. But those who can make it through those first 5 years, they end up really seeing God move in their lives, in their ministry.
Well, that's all today. Thank you for your time. Do you have any last words to say to those high schools out there that just don't know what they're going to do in the future?
Take time. People feel like they have to compete and race, but nobody figures out their life at 21. So don't feel like you're behind your friends who have their life figured out.